Hi everyone, Paul Wagner again from IAIS with another edition of Inside IAIS, and today we're going to be talking about archaeology, but more specifically, rocks that move. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Paul, rocks don't move, but they do if they're carried by humans, and those are the rocks that we're really going to focus on today. And, I was flint napping earlier, and I started to look down at the rock that I was on and started to think, where did this rock come from? And so that's something that I really want to talk about today. Where do the rocks we have in Connecticut come from? Specifically, where do the rocks that we get a lot of tools that we find in the archaeological record come from? And so I have a couple of rocks here, and I want us to take a look at them, and we're going to discuss those. And I hope you really enjoy this talk about moving rocks. So let's take a look. So the first thing that I want to talk about is this special kind of rock that you've probably seen around all over the place. It's one of the most abundant rocks that we see on the Earth, in fact, and it's called quartz. And I want to take a look right there. There's some types of quartz that we have. And first, a shout out to our volunteer Jane from the Litchfield Hills Archaeological Club for making this chart that I'm using here today with all these different types of rocks. And so quartz is one of the most abundant types of rocks that we see all over the earth, and we have a lot of quartz here in Connecticut, and we see a lot of tools made out of that. And so when we're talking about movement, we're not really talking a lot about this type of quartz, but rather we're talking about this type of quartz, which is what we call a cryptocrystalline or microcrystalline quartz. And here are some different types that we have of those. And we see there are different types. There are chert, flint, jasper, and chalcedony. Now let's talk about these two on the right and the left first, chert and jasper. Chert can be found in places like New York and New Jersey, and typically a lot of the chert that we get here in Connecticut is found in states like New York and New Jersey and things like that, outside of us to the south. And then this jasper here, we typically find that in places like Pennsylvania, have a lot of sources of jasper. And when you find these in the archaeological record or in the past, right, this means that people move these rocks from places like New York and Pennsylvania and Vermont and New Jersey all the way up here or down here to Connecticut with a specific intention. And we get a lot of this, we get some of this chalcedony, which is a very, very cryptocrystalline type of quartz. Cryptocrystalline meaning that it's very hard to find the crystals. They're kind of hidden. It means it's very dense. But we get a lot of this type of stone here in Connecticut that has traveled from other places. And why would they bring all of this different types of quartz to Connecticut? Why, when they have these amazing rocks right here? Quartz, regular, amazing regular quartz. Well, one of the reasons why is if you can see really close that a lot of if you look right here, you can see some of the breaks in, and if you could feel this, you would feel that it was really smooth. And the way that this type of rock breaks is really important. It breaks in what's called a conchoidal fracture, and that type of fracture allows for really, really fine and sharp tools. And so these rocks are really, really important. And while quartz breaks and can be made into different types of tools, it doesn't quite break the same way that these microcrystalline type of rocks break. Now, let's focus on this one that's in the center. It's not chert and it's not jasper. It's called flint. And oftentimes, as I said before, when I said I was flint napping, you will notice that we call a lot of rocks flint, but they're not actually flint. Flint is a different type of rock that's found in Europe. And I want to show you something really cool that was donated to us recently. And it really, really shows some of the movement that we see, not in the past, but in the contact period. So let's take a look at that. This is flint. Just like that rock that we saw on the chart there, this is actually flint. And the kind of shell that you see on the outside that's very chalky, because flint and chert and other quartzes are made from silica, and we get this kind of chalkiness on it. And if you could feel it, it feels really kind of like like chalk. And on the inside, you can't really see it because I haven't broken it open, but we have that black that is what we saw on that chart. And this was donated to us, thank you, Caesar, by someone who is a friend of the museum. And this actually was found in Connecticut, but it doesn't belong in Connecticut. It actually belongs in Europe. This is European flint, found in Connecticut, distributed by early Europeans who filled their ships with these rocks in order to give them weight and what they called ballast. And so the weight helped them so their ships wouldn't just tip over on the long journey from Europe here. And then when they got here, they wanted cool stuff like furs and trees and other things to fill their ships. And so they took these rocks and chucked them onto the shore. And so we see evidence of that throughout Connecticut, especially near the shore. And sometimes Native Americans at contact period would find these rocks and realize that they're really good for making tools and make tools out of them. But a lot of times we see exactly this, the leftover ballast stone. And it can still be used to make really good stone tools if you know what you're doing.